Chod Shehiyah. That means leaving food on the fire before Shabbos. What are the conditions that are necessary to leave the food on the fire before Shabbos? We all know that sometimes we usually make a blech. We don't just leave food on the fire, we usually make a blech. What's the purpose of that, and when is it absolutely necessary, meaning required of the halacha, and when is it just a minhag, and what's the purpose of the minhag? So it's like this, basically. The Chachamim said that if you put food on the fire before Shabbos, it's for sure nothing to, even if it's not cooked, it's not called bishul because you're not doing anything on Shabbos, right? But Chachamim said you have to be careful because sometimes if the food is not yet finished cooking, sometimes you may be tempted to stoke the coals. Forget that at Shabbos, of course, momentarily, and stoke the coals. You have to remember that back in the day, you had coal ovens or wood ovens, whatever it was. The fire didn't stay the same the whole time. The fire would die down, so it was always necessary to constantly stoke the coals to the extent that, I don't know if we mentioned this in the Thursday night class, that in Shulchan Aruch it's brought down that any food that's cooked in a Jew's home is automatically Bishul Yisrael, not because of the opinion that holds that it doesn't apply in a Jew's home, but because it's it's impossible. Somebody in the household for sure stoked the coals. You have to constantly, as you're passing by. It's so it was something that was done constantly. Otherwise, there was no way to maintain the flame at a proper heat. So this was a big concern, especially in those days. Okay, and Chachamim had to put measures in place to that you should remember that at Shabbos and not do it and not stoke the coals. That argument actually is even brought forth in one of the poskim that maybe today we don't need it. Because today we set a temperature, it stays the same. You don't have to worry about it dying down. They weren't worried. It appears that the concern wasn't so much that you're going to want to make the flame higher. The concern was that when it starts to die down, you're going to want to try to get it back to the way it was. But on these fires that stay the same temperature, maybe it's not necessary. Of course, we can't just like throw out a logical argument like that. Say, oh, just because it makes sense, so therefore we're going to change what it says in Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't work that way. But there was a concern of adjusting the flame, basically. So they said that sometimes, depending on the situation, you have to put you have to do something to the fire which is going to prevent you from stoking the coal. So what was done? So in the times of the Mishnah and Gemara, there was something what was called grufa ktuma. Grufa ktuma. So grufa means to bake out the coals. So this way you don't have really live coals over there. That's going to be so likely to stoke the coals. And ketuma is to cover it with something. I don't know what they used, sand or whatever it is. That would kind of.
Rufa is to rake out.
Rufa is to rake out the coals, put it to the side. And ketuma means to cover it with something like sand, or that's going to.
Is this related to the word for tuma, meaning impurity?
No.
That's all different.
Klatu means covered, buried, or whatever. So the purpose of this was to do an action, an Erev Shabbos that's diminishing the heat of the oven. And that will somehow help you that you shouldn't come to stoke the coals on Shabbos. Now, how did this work? Why did it help? So the Mefarshim explain in one of two ways. Some explain that it served as a reminder that when you come on Shabbos to stoke the coals, you'll see that the coals are covered. That will remind you not to do it. Others explain that it's not so much to remind you, it's to get your mind off of it. person is more apt to stoke the coals when he's thinking about it, about the food, and he's worried about it. Is it going to be ready in time? And you go check the fire. So, of course, you're not going to purposely do something which you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. But when he's so concerned about it, he may for a moment forget that on Shabbos and stoke the coals because he's constantly worried about it. If you take your mind off it, so if you do an action that diminishes the heat, if you're doing something, not just saying I'm not gonna think about it. You do something to make you not think about it. Made the heat lower. It's not gonna be, it's not gonna be ready till tomorrow, whatever it might be. You know what I mean? Forget about it. So that helps. That you shouldn't be on your mind so much, and you won't come to forget and stoke the coals because it wouldn't be so like. It wouldn't be on your mind so much. That's the libra. So one of the two ways. Either way, that was the takana. That was the measure that the Chachamim said you should take to help prevent. Chacham never implemented it with other things. Chacham didn't say you have to make. They have now nice inventions like light covers that cover the lights. You shouldn't by mistake turn it on and off. A person by mistake turns it on and off. That happens. I mean that the Chacham didn't implement that you have to do it. I'm not saying it's bad to do it. I'm just saying there's no halachic requirement. This is a different thing. This is because your mind, you want it to be ready on time, and the food, and like we said before, the flame tends to diminish. That's why there's a concern that you may forget that it's Shabbos because it's on your mind so much. It's not on your mind. You have to remember, be careful when you walk into a room, you don't touch the lights, and that's it. It's not so, in this case, there weren't such a big concern, you're going to forget it Shabbos and turn it on. Although it could happen, but there wasn't the Chum didn't find it necessary for that to implement something that from now on you have to have light covers or whatever. But in this case, they did. So the question is, what was the case that they required it? So this is a machlokes. There's two opinions in the Gemara, and the Rishonim, there's no consensus in the Rishonim as far as who's the halacha like. It means one group of Rishonim try to prove the halacha is like the lenient opinion, one group of Rishonim try to prove the halacha is like the strict opinion. There's no clear consensus. The two opinions are, one opinion is that any time the cooking is still beneficial for the food, it's called mistamik v'yafale, which means even if it's fully cooked, as long as the additional cooking is gonna be beneficial for the food, so then Chachamim made a gzeira. Chachamim says you have to cover the concern you're gonna stoke the coals. Chachamim required you to cover the fire. And the lenient opinion is that only if it's less than Meichel ben Yisrael. Meichel ben Yisrael means that the food is edible in extreme circumstances. So if the food is not yet edible at all, so that's when the Chachamim were concerned that you're going to be so worried that it should be ready in time that you're going to stoke the coals. So once the food is already Meichel ben Yisrael, means it's already edible. Yeah. So then they weren't so concerned. It's not going to be on your mind so much that to make sure it's ready in time or whatever it is, and you're not going to come to stoke the coals. Either because since it's already edible, so okay, it might not be as good as I want it to be, but it's already edible at least, right? Or because since it's already so close to being ready, so by the time I want to serve it, it's probably going to be finished, and therefore I'm not worried that it should be ready in time, because most probably will be ready in time even if I don't stoke the coals.
But now you might worry that they'll burn.
They weren't worried about that. It means you should lower the flame.
Yeah, I've had that issue.
I guess for that they weren't worried. You'll move it away from the fire for a while. They weren't so worried. They weren't worried you were going to lower the flame. I imagine for that purpose, because for that you could just move it away from the fire. You wouldn't have to lower the fire. these are the two opinions. So that means everybody agrees if it's less than Michael Bender, so it's not yet edible even under extreme circumstances. So then for sure there's a requirement if you want to leave it on the fire before Shabbos that you finish cooking. It's for sure a requirement that you have to have a blech. And if it's more than Michael Bender, so then it's already a machlokes. Some say you have to have it, and others say it's okay. Now, I forgot to explain what we call a blech, that metal sheet or whatever it is that we cover the fire with. So that's in the place of ketuma. That's fulfilling the same concept of ketuma, of covering the fire, which diminishes the heat somewhat. So we're taking an action to diminish the heat to some degree, and that will either remind us, or that will either, take our mind off the cooking. It won't help a person point out that seemingly what you could do is something else. Maybe make the fire to the highest before Shabbos. It's impossible to make it higher. What do you worry? You're going to trust the flame? You're going to make it higher? Make it to the highest possible that it goes. Others suggest, what's the purpose of a blech? The purpose of a blech is to diminish the heat. So on Erev Shabbos, purposely go over to the fire and purposely lower it, make it to low. It's on medium now, move it over to low. Now you did an action which is diminishing the heat, so it has that effect, right? It has that effect that it's going to take your mind off of it. So that already we can understand. It doesn't do the other. It's not going to be a reminder. When you come to adjust the flame on Shabbos, it's not going to be a reminder. But in any event, basically you have to do it the way Chazal instituted it or implemented it. You're supposed to do it, which is covering the fire. So you have to cover the fire. You can't come up with different ideas of. So that's why I kind of. I said blech, that means ketuma, that means the same thing what we're talking about, I moved into that. So, what's the halacha? We said again, there's two opinions in the Gemara. The Rishonim, there's no clear consensus. One group of Rishonim try to prove from it's a very long, it's a number of pages in the Gemara where the Gemara discusses this argument, and some try to prove from the discussion one way, and some try to prove different. The way it's brought in Shulchan Aruch is also not 100% clear. The way it's brought in Shulchan Aruch is that the minhag Yisrael adukim b'hinik Shabbos, that since Yidden are so attached to the mitzvah of Hinik Shabbos, it's so important to us. So therefore, we follow the lenient opinion. One, it should be easier to have warm food on Shabbos. So we kind of adopted the more lenient opinion. Again, the way it's phrased isn't like the halacha is like the lenient opinion. Don't worry about the other opinion. The halacha is like, with the time, we kind of adopted the lenient opinion, and it should be because this mitzvah is very important to us. So we chose the more lenient opinion. It should be easier to fulfill this mitzvah. So it doesn't sound like we're disregarding the other opinion. It sounds like, okay, this is the minhag. This is the way it's done. So I guess that means that's the halacha ultimately. If that's the minhag, that means that shows that this is ultimately the way it needs to be done. So that means like this: if the food, so what is Michael Ben Yisrael? How much is it?
Is it 1/3?
So it's a machlokes in the Rishonim, Rambam and Rashi. I don't remember who holds what, but now one opinion is 1/3 of the way cooked, and one opinion is half of the way cooked. Usually, this is also considered an unresolved machlokes, and the approach that's usually taken in halacha is that if it's a Torah prohibition that's involved, so then we accept the stricter opinion, and if it's a rabbinic prohibition, then we accept the more lenient opinion. So let's say, for example, Bishul Akum. For Svardim, they hold that a yid has to be involved before it's Michael Ben Yisrael. Once it's Michael Ben Yisrael, it's too late. Ashkenazim, we hold that a yid can be involved all the way to the end, till it's ready, till it's finished cooking. Right? But for Svardim, Up to what point? So is it a third of the way or is it half the way? Up to what point can a yid still be involved and it's not too late? Since Bishalakim are in their Rabbanan, they could accept whatever's more lenient. In that case, more lenient means halfway cooked, so they could be makel up to halfway, right? So even after it's a third of the way cooked, it's not too late for a yid to stir the pot or whatever it is, or stoke the coals, or do something that's going to make it cook better. So over here, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with an Issur D'Oraisa or an Issur D'Rabbanan?
Written Torah.
Huh?
Written Torah. Not to cook on Shabbos is from the Torah.
Not to cook on Shabbos and also not to make a fire. Also, if you stoke the coals, you're also making a fire. So both of those are one of the 39 malachas, but we're not saying the requirement to have a blech.
Oh, no, that's
a offense to those malachas, right?
That's right.
That's a D'Rabbanan. That's a rabbinic requirement. So when do the Chachamim, we're discussing now, when is this rabbinic requirement required? Up to half, meaning only up to something is a third of the way cooked, right? And once it's a third of the way cooked, you don't need a blech anymore, or you need it till halfway. So over here, by the way, a third becomes a leniency. It's the opposite. In the previous example, halfway cooked was a leniency. In this example, a third of the way cooked is a leniency. So the question is, do you have to be lenient or strict? According to the rules, according to the general rule, the way we usually go, since we're dealing with a rabbinic prohibition, and this is the Rabbanan, so we should have a right to follow the more lenient opinion and say that up until halfway cooked, up until only a third of the way cooked, you need a blech. After a third of the way, you don't need a blech anymore. However, it's explained in Shulchan Aruch that even though it's only midrabanan, but in this case, when it comes to cooking on Shabbos, anything that's connected to cooking on Shabbos, anything that's like a zera that you shouldn't come to cook on Shabbos, even though it's technically only midrabanan, we try lechatchila to give it the stricter rules of a d'oraisa. So therefore, the halacha is as follows: that lechatchila, you need a blech until it's halfway cooked. Meaning, let's say you're cooking on Shabbos, you're cooking Friday afternoon, and the cholent is almost halfway cooked. It's not yet halfway cooked. You want to leave it on the fire. So we say lechatchila, you need to make a blech because it's not yet halfway cooked. Lechatchila, we should be concerned that Michael ben Rusai means halfway cooked. We should accept the stricter opinion in this case, lechatchila. So therefore, make a blech in such a case. B'diavad, let's say someone didn't make a blech. He left the cholent on the fire without a blech underneath. So now the question becomes, are you allowed to eat the food or not? So the din is that if somebody left the food on the fire without making a blech, so then you're not allowed to eat the food on Shabbos. Not only that, you can't even eat it on Motzei Shabbos. You have to wait the time it takes for it to finish cooking. Since it's only a rabbinic prohibition, they were even more strict with it because they thought people, if this is something you're doing before Shabbos, some person can easily say to himself, well, no, you know what I'm doing. I mean, I know there's an Issur, but
so in other words,
before Shabbos, it can't be that bad what I'm doing,
you
right?
have to finish cooking it after Shabbos before you can eat it.
No, you ended up getting finished cooking on Shabbos because you left it on the fire.
Right,
You
so after
can't
Shabbos,
eat it. You can't benefit from that time that you saved. That extra 45 minutes that ended up cooking on Shabbos, you have to wait those 45 minutes after Shabbos.
Oh, okay.
So you shouldn't come to do it purposely.
Uh-huh.
People were never concerned you're going to go cook on Shabbos purposely so you could eat the food lots of Shabbos. But they were concerned that you're going to do this before Shabbos, right? Because the person would say to himself, what am I doing so bad? It's before Shabbos, it can't be that bad, right? So therefore they were even extra strict in such a case. So if the food was a third of the way cooked, without the blech, so then b'diavad we rely on the other opinion that Michael ben Rusai means only a third of the way cooked. Therefore, you can eat the food. Right? So that means
on Shabbos.
Yeah, right, on Shabbos. So it means lechatchila, we follow the stricter opinion that it means halfway cooked. So if you want to leave it on without a blech, you have to make sure that it's already cooked before Shabbos, at least halfway. But b'diavad, if it's already done, so then you follow the other opinion. Or b'diavad also means, b'diavad could also mean not that it was already cooked and the question is, could you eat the food or not? Even before Shabbos. Let's say the food is cooking. You thought you'll have enough time. You put it up Friday afternoon. You thought you'll have enough time that it should be cooked enough before Shabbos, right? And it turns out you give a look over there and it's not. It's not halfway cooked. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to make a blech, right? You're supposed to take it off the fire, cover the fire with a blech, and then put it back on. But you don't have a blech. So you say, okay, so use silver foil, use something else. You don't have silver foil. Take a pan, take something to cover the fire, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have anything. It's not feasible. The way the fire is set up, it's not feasible to do a blech. So that means, so then you could continue leaving it to cook. Even in that sense, even the chatchila, because you have no other option. So that means we try to satisfy the opinion that it means halfway cooked. But if we can't, then a third of the way cooked is good enough. So, sometimes in an oven it's very difficult to make a blech. Let's say in the electric ovens where there's like there's heating elements on the sides and on the top. Like what are you covering? You're going to cover it with foil. I don't know, maybe the oven will break if you do that. It's a little hard, right? To put like your food in like a little box so that it's surrounded by something separating it. Sometimes it's hard, right, to make a blech. So, okay, if it's halfway cooked, you don't need one. And if it's a third of the way cooked, you're supposed to make one. But if you can't, then it's okay. Right? So that's the rule as far as that's concerned. How do you measure halfway cooked?
Yeah.
Cooking time or in edibility?
Very good question.
Well, let me explain the question in a minute. When you cook something, let's say chicken needs, argument's sake, I don't know, an hour and a half, whatever, however long it needs, right? After 45 minutes, it's not halfway cooked. It's half the time that it needs to be in the oven, but it's not edible. It's not halfway edible yet. Halfway edible comes much. In other words, once the food heats up, then it starts to get ready. Till it heats up, nothing really is happening to the food. So a lot of the cooking actually takes place much more towards the end. Like sometimes if you leave something on the fire, an extra minute or two, it could burn. A minute or two, but in the beginning, nothing's happening to the food in the first 2 minutes. But the last 2 minutes, you leave it on 2 minutes extra, the whole thing will burn. So a lot of the cooking takes place at the end. So what are we judging? So it doesn't say clearly. So, and it also may depend on what I explained it, if you remember before, like 2 ways. I said, why does maple blender soy not require a blech? Because on the one hand, we said, since it's already edible, so you're not worried about it. So for that it means it has to be edible. I said another reason that since it's already so close to being ready, so it'll be ready in time even if you don't stoke the coals, even if you don't adjust the flame. That maybe has to do with time. So it's not clear. I don't remember, because there's no clear consensus of what it means. But certainly the chatchila, if you're trying to put something up without a blech, okay, so it requires, you should try to make the chatchila at least, that it should be halfway in edibility, halfway cooked in terms of how edible it is.
Well, that's subjective. I've had people serve chicken that's still pink inside, and I don't like that. I like the meat falling off the bones.
So that's still halfway cooked. Okay, no, so we already explained that, I think, in previous classes, that there is a level called Vushel Kokt Zarka, and there's a level called Neftamik V'Yafalei. Okay, when something's fully cooked, it means it's edible under normal, that it's edible to the average person, the typical person, under regular, normal circumstances. It doesn't mean that most people might like that particular type of dish should be extra cooked, overcooked, right? That's okay. That doesn't affect most halachas. It affects this halacha, because according to one opinion, right, you still needed a blech. As long as the additional cooking is good for the food, you still need a blech. But again, that's not really the halacha. But we said before that opinion is not really sidelined. So it's not that it says Shulchan Aruch. The halacha is that if it's halfway cooked, you don't need a doesn't say it that way. It says that the minhag is that we're lenient. We're lenient according to this opinion. But it leaves room. It sounds like it leaves a room to try that it's better to be strict. And that's why, practically, the minhag is, right, that we make a blech. Even if the food is more than halfway cooked, we make a blech. Right? Now, the standard is you put the food up, you have a blech. Most of the food is already cooked. The chicken soup, when you put food on the blech, the chicken soup, I'm sure, is already more than halfway cooked. It's probably all the way cooked. The chicken that you leave, the potato cooked, this is all fully cooked. You're just leaving it there to stay warm, right? So in all these cases, you don't need a blech, technically, right? So, right, because it's more than halfway cooked. You could put the chicken soup on the fire and take the tray of chicken, put it on top of the pot of chicken soup, and that's it. Keep it all warm that way. So it could be that it's just has to do with practical, that when you make a blech, you kind of turn it into a hot plate a little bit. It extends the heat a little. So you can have the chicken soup on top of the fire, and you can have the chicken on the side. There's no blech, there's no side really, but it's also from a halachic standpoint, it's better to have a blech. Because, you go ahead.
No, so if, last time we said, if we have a hot plate, so it means like it's the first source of fire, so I need to put something on it, like an aluminum or something, to put something on it, like the chicken, like the blech, because you say
So I want to clarify.
source.
I want to clarify what we were talking about then and what we're talking about now. Then we were talking about taking something which is cooked, that was already cooked, and on Shabbos putting it on the hot plate
I know.
to warm it up on Shabbos.
No.
To Chazara, it was there and you took it off, you want to put it back?
But I remember you said the hot plate is like considered like a first fire, like the fire itself. So we need to put something on it and then.
What I remember speaking about previously is that we were talking about warming stuff up on Shabbos. And so we said that you need to have two conditions. Condition number one is that the food has to be fully cooked and dry, so that you're not cooking it, you're just rewarming it. And the second condition is, even then, you're only allowed to put it in a place which is not a normal cooking place, like on top of a pot. So we asked, what about a hot plate? Could you take the schnitzel and put it directly on the hot plate, or not? So we said, if it's a kind of hot plate, you adjust the temperature. So that's like a regular fire. So that you have to have something else on it, like a pan of bowl or whatever, and then you can put something on top of that pan of food. And if it's a warmer, it doesn't really you can't cook. You can only keep things warm. So then we said, Me'ikar Adin, many places can permit that you could treat that warmer like the top of the pot. So whatever you're allowed to put on top of the pot, you're allowed to put on that warmer, because that warmer is not a place where you could cook. It's not normal to cook on such a place, on such a fire. That's what we were saying. Now we're talking about something else. Now we're talking about you're putting food before Shabbos, that it should finish cooking. The food is not fully cooked. But on the other hand, it's not Shabbos, it's before Shabbos. And you want to put the food which is not yet finished cooking on the fire before Shabbos, so that it should finish cooking on Shabbos. When do you have to have a blech, and when can you do it without a blech? So what we said was that the halacha, strictly speaking, if the food is ma'achal ben risoy, which means more than halfway cooked, you don't need a blech. But it's still better, and b'diavad, even if it was a third of the way cooked, you don't need a blech. But better, as a chumrah, it's better that you should have a blech even if it's all the way cooked. So there's three levels. There's lechatchila, or I guess you can say a chumrah, lechatchila, and then b'diavad. Chumrah is always to have a blech even if it's fully cooked. That's not a halachic requirement. L'chatchila, the basic halachic requirement is that if you need to have a blech until it's halfway cooked. More than halfway cooked you don't need, but less than halfway cooked you do need. And b'diavad, or if you don't have a blech, like the least you could rely on is if it's a third of the way cooked, you don't need a blech. But less than a third of the way cooked, you for sure need a blech. Okay, so that's the rule.
Thank you.
And what's the reason for the chumrah that we added just now? That even if it's fully cooked, you still need a blech. Very simple. To be choishish, to be concerned for that opinion, for the other opinion that holds that you need to have a blech, even if it's fully cooked, as long as the cooking, it's a type of a food that the extra cooking makes it more tasty. So then that's called mitzvah b'yafalei. You're still gonna have to have a blech because we're still worried you're gonna adjust the flame, right? So again, that's not the halacha, but as a chumrah, we try to be yotzei that opinion as well. So that's why we always try to have a blech. Now, a blech on a fire is the way we just described. In other words, let's say this is a stove. So there's a piece of metal they sell in Calvin Court and Weinstein's, and right? That's designed. It's 30 inches wide. It's 24 inches. It's meant to cover the fires. They sell ones that are only half the size of the so they only cover 2 fires. Whatever. They sell ones that have a piece that comes down and ones that have a piece. In other words, that comes down. Let's say this is the front of the stove where the knobs are. So they sell ones that come down so it can cover the knobs also. What is that about? That's something very interesting. In the olden days, the oven, when they would cover the coals with the sand or whatever they used, so they were covering both the fire and the place where you adjusted the fire from. It was the same place. They used to stoke the coals. Now it's 2 different things. There's the knob, that's where we adjust the fire from, and then there's the fire itself. So what are we supposed to cover? The fire. What's more important, to cover the fire or to cover the place where you adjust the fire from? Okay. So the consensus, the place can agree that for sure you have to cover the fire. That's the most important thing. It's better to also cover the knobs, but it's covering the knobs by itself is not enough. Because the way the Chachamim implemented it is that the fire has to be covered. But it also would be good to also cover the knobs because that's the place where you adjust the flame from. If we go by the reasons that we were talking about before, so as a reminder, so maybe covering the knobs is good enough. But the other reason, which is you're taking an action which is going to take your mind off the cooking because you're covering the fire, that only works when you're covering the fire because that's the only thing you're doing something to diminish the heat.
What is better, halachit, hot plate or blech?
What do you mean?
Like more machmir or more better? I don't know, for Shabbos.
What
to avoid problems, I don't know.
What do you mean by hot plate?
Warmer.
Warmer that you can't do. Well, they're both the same.
Because in the blech, if you put it in the side where is the fire, it can really cook. It's really, really, really hot.
But we're talking about if you're just setting up your food, food that's already fully cooked. Okay. So then there's no bet. I mean, halachically speaking, there's no the warmer and the blech are the same. The warmer is impossible to adjust the temperature, so I guess it's impossible to. And the blech, that's what the Chacham said you need to do to make sure you don't adjust the flame. So from a halachic standpoint, it's the same. You did what the Chacham said is going to prevent you from adjusting the flame. If the food is not yet fully cooked, so then a warmer is not really going to help you. It's because it's not going to be strong enough to finish cooking the food. The blech could help you. So not always you could use a warmer. In other words, sometimes the food is not all the way cooked. You need it to stay on the fire that it should finish cooking. So then the way you're supposed to do it is you have to have a blech. You don't always have to. If it's less than halfway cooked, you have to have a blech. If it's more than halfway cooked, then it's better to have a blech. Okay. So what happens? So we're talking about the knobs. So it's better to cover the knobs as well. That's why they sell those kind of blechs that go down, so that they can cover. Not all kinds of ovens you can have that. The oven that I have now, I can't use those kind of blechs. It's shaped like this, basically. knobs are here.
They're at an angle.
They're at an angle, yeah, coming out like from the. This is the cooking surface, and then the knobs. It's not in front like this, and it's kind of on top, but not the same height. It's a little bit lower. Makes it a little angle out. So I can't use that. You know. So if you want to cover the knobs, you cover with anything else. Take a piece of silver foil, take a piece of tape, do it, whatever, you know.
I used to just pull the knob off, set them up on top, and that way you can't turn it. I mean, you could, but it's very hard to turn.
I suppose as a reminder that would be good enough. But again, the main thing would be, I don't think that would be enough that you shouldn't have to cover the fire with a blech.
Right. Yeah.
If you would make it, it's impossible to adjust the flame. You would like seal the knobs with a lock or something, you know. That might be enough. That you don't need to cover the flame with fire with a blech. But you could still turn. It's just harder to turn, right? You need to it's a little
The
harder
little
to
post,
turn.
yeah, you can
Turn them. So I'm saying, so that wouldn't help. That you shouldn't need a blech. That would be enough for the chumrah, also covering the knobs. Okay, so that's as far as the knobs are concerned. What do you do with things that a blech doesn't have to be that sheet of metal that that's specifically designed for it. That means anything that covers the fire. Okay, you could use silver foil, and in the case of like a crock pot or a hot plate, and again, not a warmer. The warmer doesn't need one because if there's no knob to adjust the flame, then there's no like setting, medium, high, low, auto. If you don't have multiple settings, there's no need for a blech. The whole requirement becomes when you have multiple settings. So, what do you do if you have one of these with multiple settings? So you use a piece of foil. Right? The foil has to be wherever your food is. If your food is, let's see, up to here, so you need foil over there. You need the foil separating your pot of food and the fire, the heating element. Even though you don't have to cover necessarily the whole fire, you have to cover the whole thing that's between your pot of food and the fire. In the crock pot is the same thing. The way it's made is like it has like an outer. With like a heating element inside of it. And it's meant to have like a little pot going inside. Another pot, not a little one necessarily. That's the way it is, right? The regular old, the original style crock pots. So you have to have, if the cholent is less than halfway cooked, you're supposed to make a blech. So what you do is that foil, there's a foil in between here. And it's not enough just to have the foil on bottom, because it's not like that's the only part where the heat is coming from. The heating elements on the side as well. So you have to have the foil going all around. So you're going to end up having to have at least 2 pieces of foil, because you're going to have to put, let's say, one this way and then one the other way. Or you'll have to put one like this and one on the bottom. So I end up having to have, 2 pieces of foil, and that's how you make the blech. And that's counted as a blech. And again, for extra measure, you can cover the knobs. It's not absolutely required. This is, of course, if the cholent is less than halfway cooked. More than halfway cooked, technically, you don't need a blech over there. You would need a blech for chazara. Means if you want to serve the cholent and put it back onto the crock pot. So you need a blech to be able to put it back. When it comes to chazara, to put it back on the fire, so then you need a blech, even if it's fully cooked. Everyone agrees you need a blech. So that's one of the conditions. It came to before Shabbos. you only needed a blech, strictly speaking, only need a blech that's less than halfway cooked. But when it comes to on Shabbos, when you want to put it back, then you're going to need a blech, even if it's fully cooked. So let's say you made a shalom without a blech, because it was already cooking since Friday morning, and by the time Shabbos came, it's more than halfway cooked. And now you're just leaving it on low, that it should finish cooking. Certainly if it was fully cooked and you're just leaving it on auto or whatever it is, that it should stay warm. So technically you don't need a blech. There's no question you don't need a blech. But if you're going to want to do chazar, you're going to need a blech. So technically that blech you could do on Shabbos. Let's say you take it out and then take some foil and put it in before you put it back in. Someone else will have to help you, obviously, because you have to hold the child the whole time. You can't put it down. So,
you have to have 4 hands.
Yeah, but saying technically that blech could be made on Shabbos, but that would be also another possible practical purpose of making a blech, is so that you should be able to do chazar on Shabbos without having to scramble on Shabbos to look for the blech or to prepare it, especially if you have to start cutting foil into the right shape. So
Can't do on Shabbos. Can't cut foil on Shabbos.
questionable.
Really? I thought for sure you can't cut foil on Shabbos because now you're preparing it. It's the same thing as toilet paper. You know, you can't prepare for use.
Okay, it was also not 100%. It's so simple.
Really?
Definitely better not to. Okay, it's definitely better not to. If it's absolutely problematic, it's questionable. There are those that hold it could be
I have
cut.
a question. For the chazara, I know we have 6
Conditions.
but I heard that before putting back on the blech or in the warm plate, I need to put the
lid back on?
yeah, like I cannot put on the blech and then put the thing on. Yeah, it's right or no?
So we spoke about this. We spoke about this in a previous class. What we explained is like this. I'll first explain the reason why they say it's not allowed, and then I'll tell you what we said over. In other words, what many points can say. The reason why you would think it's not allowed is because when it comes to hagasa, when it comes to stirring the pot, the din is that even if it's fully cooked,
No,
right?
not to stove.
I know. What I'm saying,
Okay.
the din is that even if it's fully cooked, you're not allowed to do it when it's on the fire. Take it off fire, and when it comes to stirring mamish, hagasa mamish, we said you're not allowed to leave it off the fire. Only serving, which is me'ain megis, that you could do when it's off the fire, but you're not supposed to do it when it's on the fire. That's why you're supposed to take it off the fire when to serve. Now the Gemara, it says, it's actually the Gemara that I'm just learning with my Talmidim in Yeshiva, that there's a case if let's say tipas challah falls on a chaticha, which is outside of the reitiv. Let's say it's sticking out like this. So since it's outside the reitiv, it's only going to get absorbed into the half chaticha. So it'll make it aser, because it won't be batal b'shishim in the whole pot. But if you stir it right away, then it's going to make that the tipa, instead of getting absorbed, the drop of milk, instead of getting absorbed into the piece, it's going to go everywhere. It's going to spread. So it's going to go into the water, and it's going to spread everywhere. So it says there, it doesn't matter if you stir it, it doesn't matter if you cover it. It's the same thing. It's going to cause it to spread. So you see from there that covering, the same idea, mixes. Covering mixes. So if the din by mixing is it's not allowed to be on the fire, okay? Even if you're not mamish mixing, you're just serving, it's not supposed to be on the fire. So the same thing, covering, right, should be just as bad as even if it's not mamish mixing, but should be just as bad as serving, right? So that's why some say that it's not supposed to be on the fire when you cover it. What we said over from Moshe Feinstein, and that's how my Farkash Paskin is that you don't have to be careful when it comes to putting the cover back on, because this whole thing is a gzeira. It's fully cooked, the food. So even real stirring is a gzeira. It's an isidra. And serving, if you're not mamish stirring, you're just saying that's like a gzeira almost. It's like so wherever was accepted, which is by stirring or by serving, that's fine. But covering, which never spoke about clearly, we don't have to on our own say, well, there's a Gemara that compares covering to stirring, so therefore it would be a real Isser, like cooking on Shabbos, yeah? Food is not yet fully cooked, so then you can't stir, you can't cover. There's no question. It causes it to cook better, right? But here we're talking about fully cooked food, and it's only Xera. So where they made Xera, they made it. Where they didn't make it, we don't have to go and by ourselves say, well, it should also apply here. We don't have to do that. So some people are careful about it, but some people are. Obviously, you were taught at some point, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. If that's what you're used to doing and you're careful about it,
something new.
Somebody told you.
Yeah, someone told me so. Like I didn't know.
You don't have to change from that to a minute. You don't have to change.
So and letting the pot on the warm plate, uncovered like a few minutes. We are allowed.
Explain.
I don't know.
You have a pot of food on the warmer,
Yeah.
on a hot plate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's
And I don't know, like you take the cover and then you forget something. I don't know. You do something else. You take another, a plate, something, and all the time it's uncovered on the hot plate. You are
now
allowed.
you want to cover it back up?
Yeah, but the food it's okay because it's like maybe it has like it's a little bit more cold or.
If it's fully cooked
Yeah, it's not.
and it's still warm, then there's no issue with,
So b'diavad we can let it all the Shabbos without a cover.
Absolutely, you could.
Yes.
Then it'll for sure.
Want to dry out a little bit. There's too much water.
We are allowed.
Take off the cover. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a crock pot with cholent inside,
Making it cook less, not cook more.
Yeah. But then
So
after when you cover it, it will be more, no?
So again, if it's not yet fully cooked,
No, it's
that would be a
always
problem. But if it's fully cooked,
No problem.
not a problem. You have to maybe be careful if the cover's wet. You should dry the cover before you cover it back up.
Yeah.
The cover is wet, and so then if that water
Yes.
cool down, so then when you put it back on, so you could be cooking that.
Yes.
So if it's wet, you dry it off first.
so if you've got a crock pot with cholent and it looks like it's getting too dry inside, and you want to take water from the urn, put it in there, we said we could do that.
We didn't go through all the conditions that are necessary, but you're able to do that. But we didn't go through.
So
all
the question
conditions how we're
is-
supposed to do it.
Yeah, so you've lifted the lid a little bit, you put in some hot water, now you're putting the lid back. So putting the lid back, is that cooking?
Only cooking if the food inside there is not yet fully cooked.
Uh-huh.
But the only way you're going to be allowed to add water into the cholent is if the cholent is fully cooked.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of takes that away.
So what if it's not quite fully cooked, but the water has boiled away and now it looks like it could burn and not yet be fully cooked? Now you're kind of stuck then.
Now you're stuck. You have to wait till it's fully cooked before you can add anything to it.
Uh-huh.
So otherwise, you can't put the cover back on, or you can't do anything that's going to make it cook better at this point. So adding water would also be problematic.
Uh-huh. And then from the urn, if you put a cup by the urn and take that and
We
put
don't
water.
do it that
Now,
way.
yeah, now
It
you
has
got
to
a
be
plate.
directly from the.
Gotta be directly from the urn, but now you're gonna make your urn flay shake, right?
So we'll talk about how to do it carefully, so that doesn't become an issue.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Will we talk about that this week?
When we get to it this week, we have one more class. No, most probably next week.
Well, after class, can you tell me what to do?
Next week is Hanukkah.
Is this,
Yeah, it has to go directly from the urn to the kettle. So do you have an urn or a kettle?
well, it's an urn and has no
So you're not gonna be
controls.
bringing-
You just
so
have
you're
to
not
push
gonna
the
be
top.
So you're not going to be bringing the urn to the cholent. You're going to bring the
Well,
cholent.
the urn
to
normally sits by it,
But
yeah.
I'm saying, no, if it's a kettle, then you're going to bring the kettle to the cholent.
Oh,
If
uh-huh.
it's an urn, you're going to bring the cholent to the urn. That's why I'm asking you
Oh,
what you're doing
okay.
over here,
Uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh,
So, because you don't use a cup in between, so you're bringing one to the other.
uh-huh.
So you're going to bring the cholent to the. So first of all, the cholent has to be fully cooked, of course.
Uh-huh.
It has to be blech under the cholent, just for you
Well,
to be,
the
able,
foil,
for you
it
to
has
be
a
able to put it back,
Uh-huh.
to crock pot, whatever it is, right? So what you're going to do is.
Now, so can
that's
I move
fine.
the entire crock pot or do I have to take the crock out of the heating thing?
Out, because the same way you're not allowed to stir when it's inside. I imagine you have to if you want to add water, it should be off No, maybe not.
Because they're both sitting right there on the counter. I
Maybe
could
not.
move either. I mean, I want to know halakhically, can I move either or both of them? Because I mean, physically, I can move,
Neither of them is muktzah. Neither of them is muktzah.
but they're both
That's
plugged
what
in.
you're asking.
They're both plugged in.
Still, neither is. You have to be careful that you don't take the plug out, but neither is muktzah. Do you have to take it out before you? No, most probably not. I have to double check that if it's better to take it out before you put the water in. That should be off the fire when you put the water in. I'm thinking that not, but you may have to. And then you take it to the water. Right, so you take the.
So it's better to move the crock pot to the urn.
Okay, either one. I guess if they're right next to each other, you can move. I'm just thinking practically. Usually, when you have an urn and a cholent pot, you'll have to bring the cholent pot to the urn. And then you have to the only thing you have to be careful about is that it's not becoming fleshig.
Yeah, that's the question.
So the way you do that is that it shouldn't sprit. You don't take off the cover when the urn is right there, because then that burst of steam is going to make it fleshig.
So you take the cover
Take
first.
the cover off first. Let the initial burst of steam dissipate. Then let the initial burst of steam dissipate. Then you'll get to gauge how high up the steam is going. Out of the pot of cholent, how high up the steam is going. Chances are, from a crock pot that's not boiling vigorously, it's just going to be a little bit above.
Simmering a little bit.
And then you're going to know how high up you have to hold the urn over
So the
thing.
urn, it's about this tall, and the spigot is like there. The
So
spigot's
you
not
don't
down
want,
here.
but if
Spigot's
the
up here.
crock pot's coming till here, then the steam is going to be reaching the spout. You don't want that. So then what you would have to do is take it out and hold it down lower. You don't want the steam to reach the spout. And you also don't want, when you're pouring it in, stuff to spritz. Like the droplet should spritz on the outside of the urn. So those are the two things you're going to be careful about. So for the steam, the main thing is to make sure that you don't get that initial burst. Let that dissipate, then see how high it is, and then you could just judge. You could always just make sure to hold it higher.
So you might
Yeah,
need
that's
two
the-
people,
Maybe.
because this urn,
Usually you'll need
you have
two.
to, the way it works,
Yeah,
you have to pump the
push it.
top.
So you need it one hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Usually when you're adding water, unless it's like you're taking from a kettle, you just bring it to the cholent pot and you pour it in
Uh-huh.
while it's on the blech.
Yeah.
Right? So that you don't need two people. But otherwise it's something. Yeah. Do it this way you need to. So what do we have today? We have Gemara.
Yeah, I have that.